Hello, dear viewers. There are almost 100 of you already. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. If you're interested in this type of content, please subscribe. I would be grateful to you. Thanks. Let's move on to the story. In the darkness, when the world sleeps, the office building transforms into something else. Doors, usually so easily opened during the day, become like imposing gates, behind which something sinister lurks. It was evident in every creak of the old doors, in every otherworldly echo they emitted. But nothing foreshadowed that this night would turn into a true nightmare. I, Michael, had been working at the software development company for a long time and had seen our office transform when the sun sets. Usually I didn't pay much attention to it, but this time something was different. Perhaps it was because I heard a strange rustle in the dark corridor as I made my way to my workstation. We, the night shift workers, usually worked in isolation, each sitting behind our computers in our corners of this huge office. But that rustle made me freeze and listen intently. Maybe it was just a draft sneaking through the old window frames, but something in that noise made the hairs on my arms stand on end. I tried to brush it off and focus on my work, but the sense of unease wouldn't leave me. Every time I looked away from my monitor, it felt like something dark and unfamiliar darted in my peripheral vision. But the real horror began when I heard a soft knock on the door at the other end of the corridor. At first, I thought it was a colleague, suddenly deciding to drop by for a minute, but when the knock repeated, I knew something was off. No one from our colleagues should have been here tonight, except us. My heart started beating faster as the knock repeated, this time louder and more insistent. I got up from my seat and slowly walked towards the sound, feeling the tension building with every step. When I reached the door, the knocking stopped, and a dead silence engulfed the darkness of the corridor. I felt cold sweat breaking out on my palms as I reached for the door handle. Seconds stretched into eternity as I finally dared to open the door. But there was no one behind the door. Only darkness and emptiness greeted me. I breathed a sigh of relief and decided that my imagination was playing a cruel trick on me. Returning to my workstation, I tried to focus on my work, but the ominous feeling lingered. Oh, how I prayed it was just a nightmare, but every moment confirmed that I found myself amidst something terrifying and inexplicable. My mind rejected the idea of something supernatural, but my senses screamed of something else. The darkness surrounding me was so thick that it felt like it had its own physical essence. I could feel its penetrating smell, hear its invisible breath, and it was so real that I could almost feel its touch. Amidst this darkness, I heard whispers, which seemed like echoes of my own thoughts. They were filled with fear and anxiety, as if the souls trapped in this office were trying to convey their terrible stories to me. I understood that I couldn't stay here any longer, but every time I tried to move towards the exit, something made me stop. Every rustle, every creak of the door pierced my soul, as if reminding me that I was not alone in this darkness. Something sinister and ominous lurked in the corners of the office, waiting for its next victim. I realized that there was something more here than just scary sounds and dark shadows. It was like a menacing presence that permeated everything around me, filling the air with fear and despair. I felt my hand trembling as I reached for the phone to call for help, but the line was dead, as if the whole world had forgotten about this place. And then I heard a scream, piercing and full of terror, coming from somewhere in the darkness of the office. It was so real that it made my heart skip a beat in my chest. It was the scream of someone who found themselves in the embrace of this ominous darkness, who became a victim of something inexplicable and terrifying. I rushed towards the source of the scream, without thinking about the consequences. My legs ran, while my mind screamed for me to stop, but something deep inside me urged me forward, reminding me that I couldn't remain indifferent to someone else's suffering. As I approached the place where the scream came from, I saw her, a figure shrouded in a dark veil, moving slowly down the dark corridor. My mind rejected what I saw, but my eyes couldn't deceive me. Something sinister and undefined was here with me, something that shouldn't exist in the world of the living. I froze in place, unable to move or utter a word. In this darkness, in this atmosphere of despair, I realized that I was nothing more than a mere pawn in the game of forces surpassing my understanding. And when the figure disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone with my fears, I realized that it was only the beginning of our nightmare. My heart was beating so hard that I could feel its beats in my ears, as if each beat was a reminder of my own vulnerability in this world of darkness and fear. I slowly moved forward, feeling more and more anxious and worried with each step. But I couldn't remain indifferent to what was happening in this place. I had to find answers, even if they proved to be too terrifying for my mind. Every corner of the office seemed filled with fear and secrets, ready to burst into the light from the dark corners. My nerves were on edge, and I knew that every minute spent here would only amplify my condition. But then I saw her, a figure standing at the dark end of the corridor. She was mesmerizing and terrifying at the same time, her eyes gleaming in the darkness like two fires ready to engulf me. My legs froze, and my mind screamed for me to run, but there was something about this figure that drew me in, making it impossible for me to look away. She approached me, step by step, as if a shadow coming to life and hunting in the darkness. I didn't know what this creature was, but I felt that it didn't bring anything good. When she was close enough, I heard her voice, hoarse and cold, like a ghost trapped in this world. "You see us, Michael. You feel our pain, our fears. But it doesn't matter. We are here to stay, so that no one forgets us." I tried to keep the tremor out of my voice as I asked, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" But her answer was only a whisper in the darkness, like an omen of an inevitable nightmare. "We are those who are lost in the darkness, Michael. Those who can no longer find their way home. And you will become one of us." These words made me recoil, but she was already too close. I could feel her cold touch, her dark gaze engulfing me entirely. I screamed, trying to push her away, but she was stronger than me. Her power over me was irresistible. And then I remembered one thing: light. I looked into her eyes and saw that they burned brighter when I raised my flashlight. And it gave me hope, the last thread that remained for me. Gathering the last shreds of my strength, I reached for the switch and turned on the light. The sudden light illuminated the whole room, and in the next moment, the figure disappeared, as if it had never existed. I fell to my knees, trembling and exhausted. I realized that it was only the beginning of my journey through darkness and fear, but I couldn't let it consume me entirely. I had to stay strong, find a way out of this nightmare, and overcome everything it presented to me. When the light returned to the office, I knew that it was only the beginning of my struggle with this darkness. But I was ready to accept the challenge, ready to fight for my mind and soul, even if it meant fighting with all the nightmares this world could offer me.